first of all, those videos, the stories have just been amazing. And I'm so grateful to be a part of this because it just goes to show you that the quote that was at the end of a slide that said that sometimes courage comes more naturally than you think is so true. I wanted to start off by saying for anyone who's watching and all of the families who are maybe going through a similar situation where your child is diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and you're struggling, it's kind of like thinking about it in terms of a book. When a woman learns that she is going to be a mother, she starts the process of planning this book that's going to be written for her child. She starts preparing all of the materials, getting the best cover and the best foundation possible so that her child can write this amazing story, better than her book. And all of a sudden, in this moment, someone comes and snatches out all the pages and all of the beautiful work that you did and says, no, you can't do that. There's no room for creativity here. This is your child's story. Here you go. And it's heartbreaking and it hurts and it feels like you've been robbed. And worse, it feels like your baby had something stolen from them. And then you wonder, like, is this really going to be my child's story? And that's kind of what happened to myself. And I'm sure everybody here can kind of attest to that feeling when the doctor came into the room and gave you a diagnosis. And with us, Noah, similar to some of these other accounts, Noah had a healthy upbringing. He was the first person ever diagnosed with IBD in our family. We had no family history. I never heard about Crohn's disease besides the commercials, but I thought that was something that affected maybe just older people. I never really thought twice about it. And he always, manifested an issue and an intolerance to maybe dairy and other foods because as a baby, he had eczema and had a lot of gas. And as all of us maybe have learned, a lot of the gut and intestinal imbalances are manifested through the skin. So we'll notice maybe some issues in the skin first. And that's kind of what we noticed with Noah. And we would always address our pediatrician and address it with her and ask her, what's going on? What can we do? And very little attention was given to diet. No one really thought about it. So Noah went on for a long time with stomach upsets and gas or just overall discomfort. And at 3 years old, his symptoms started to become really bad. And it got to the point where his skin was starting to have other strange manifestations where he was having bruising on his legs, joint pain, which someone else attested to. And he was having trouble walking and even running. He couldn't play. And a lot of the times the doctor would just say it was behavioral and that it was, a stubborn child who just, didn't want to do what his mom is telling him, which changed my way of disciplining him and made it very difficult because to this day, I feel bad about not advocating for my child and looking at him like he was just rebellious when he was actually in pain. It took a while. And even though a diagnosis makes us feel better because we can kind of pinpoint the problem, we didn't really need a diagnosis for someone to say, what are you feeding him? What is he eating? But no one ever asked that question. So I knew nothing about nutrition at the time. And I just fed my child the way I grew up, which was, sometimes the frozen chicken nuggets and other times, snacks or chips that I thought were healthy, like goldfish and Oreos for treats when he went to school or daycare. So all of these things just left us with no answers until we finally pressed the doctor to give us an answer and tell us what's going on with our child because he was becoming worse. He started to have sores in his mouth and refused to eat. He started to have bleeding. He had sores also all the way down to his rectum. He had leakage, and the doctors would just tell us, no, this is a constipation issue. Your child's withholding and your child does not want to go to the bathroom. He's just being stubborn. Again, blaming it on his behavior. And me at the time being so trusting of whatever a doctor said, I was like, little boy, get your butt in that toilet and go to the bathroom. Because I thought it was a him issue. And it really just left me in ignorance. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to help him as much as I would have wanted to. But eventually his symptoms became so bad that he was daily crying. He had nocturnal accidents where defecation, where poop would just come out while he's sleeping and he would be screaming because it's burning him and it hurts so much. In the middle of the night, those things would happen and wake us up twice a night sometimes. And, you know, we spoke about this earlier, all of us, and a lot of times us as parents or those of us who suffer from IBD, we just go through this in silence and we don't really tell anybody. Because when you tell people, they say things like, oh, he just has a stomach ache, give him some Pepto-Bismol. Or, oh, well, you know, he's just being stubborn, you better make him walk. And no one really understands what you're going through. So it changes your parenting, it changes your self-esteem as a parent, it changes the way you interact with your child and how you help them. And so we kind of went through this for a long time, quietly, not really explaining to anybody why his behavior was the way it was or why he was often just uncomfortable. So once we pressed the doctor to perform some type of diagnostic test on him, the doctor had said to us, you know, I'm going to do this to put you at ease. But at the end of the day, your son doesn't have a problem. He's just being stubborn and has a constipation issue. You need to just give him the Miralax, give him more stool softeners and glycerin suppository and just force him to go. And we did what he said. And my child was in even more pain because he had diarrhea already, which was causing anal fissures and more bleeding. So we listened to the doctor and then finally went in and had the colonoscopy done. And my husband and I went to Starbucks thinking that the doctor was right. And we were like, well, after the colonoscopy, you know, he's going to come back and say, you know, he just had some constipation. When we went into the recovery room and saw Noah, everybody was acting very nervous around us. And we were trying to figure out what was going on. Is he okay? So we spoke to the doctor and the doctor kind of did what I just mentioned to you. He ripped out the pages of the story that we had written for our child. And he just said, your son has Crohn's disease and will forever have it. And I asked him a million questions because I did not know what it was. And I asked him, well, what can we do? How do we cure it? And he said, there is no cure. He will have it forever. And he will have to be on medication forever. He explained the medication and what the options are. We could either do tube feeding, which he said is completely unrealistic. You don't want to do that. And I asked him how tube feeding would help him. And he said it would rest the digestive system. But I asked him, maybe is there food that could do the same thing? And he said food has nothing to do with it. While he's saying this, the doctors come in or the nurses come in and give my son a bottle of milk or a carton of milk and some chocolate Oreos right after he had this procedure done. And me in ignorance, I'm like, oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. Thinking that it was going to comfort him and not knowing the pain he was going to be in because of that trigger to a flare-up. And the doctor goes on to tell me that food has nothing to do with it. So all of a sudden, I'm researching the side effects of the medications, and all these medications have all these different, you know, they put these limitations. He told us we would have to be careful with Noah being in the sun because of his increased risk of cancer and all these other problems that could come up, and just really scaring us. And I thought, similar to these other parents, well, what about him, his future? What about when he goes to college? What if he wants to travel? How is he going to do that with this? And that's where I felt like his book was written, and it just like not by me and not by him, which was worse. And something that stuck with me that I've heard is one alternative medicine author. He said, you can believe the diagnosis, but don't believe the prognosis. And that's because oftentimes a doctor will tell you, this is what your son has, or this is what you have, and this is how his life is going to be. But who gives them that authority to say that for the rest of my child's life, this is what he has to do, and write his story out for him? And I think that that message didn't sit well with me. So I went home and I started researching and called my support team, which is my family. And everyone agreed and said, there's got to be something. There's got to be something that we're missing. Maybe we've got to change his food. So my aunt came to help me, and she taught me a lot about food and how food affects the body and how it's the start of disease. And I had no idea what she was talking about. We listened to her and immediately started to ask her, what do we need to do? So she told us, okay, let's go through your cabinets, take everything out. We took everything out of our cabinets. She's like, this poison, this toxins, this coloring, this is sugar, all of this, these are all additives and toxins that are hurting your child's immune system, that's causing him to have inflammation in his body. This is not helping you. So I'm like, I just bought that, but that's full still, that's still closed. And she said, do you want to Malcolm X this, or do you want to Martin Luther King this? And I was like, I thought about it. And what she meant was, do you want to peacefully approach this and be, careful and just hope something works? Or do you want to go in and eradicate this disease? And I was like, I want to Malcolm X this. So we took everything out of the cabinets, threw it away. And I got angry and I got upset because the entire time I realized I'm being lied to. Like, the government and everyone told me this was safe, so I bought it. But now I'm doing research and I'm looking at the ingredients and I'm finding out that all of these things actually cause these issues that my child was experiencing, all the symptoms that he had. So we got rid of everything, started doing more research, went on a plant-based diet, sort of helped, but didn't get him there. And then all of a sudden, similar to someone else, at 3 a.m, my husband wakes me up and says, look at this woman, there's this thing called SCD. Her child is going on a field trip for the first time by himself. And I was like, I couldn't ever see Noah doing that. He had incontinence. There was no way he could even walk far enough. I wouldn't want him to even go with family members because I would be afraid that he would have an accident. And this is a smart boy who was potty trained before he was 2 years old. But I said, I can't imagine this works. And at this time we're plant-based. And I'm like, you can have turkey, you can have chicken, you can have. And I was like, there's no way this is going to work. But we tried it. And when we tried it, immediately after just a couple of days, Noah, he had bruising on his legs that were gone. He started to feel better. He had solid stools. And we said, wow, this might be working. Thankfully, I'll just fast forward the story to today. Noah is thriving. He is still not on medication. His doctor called us to discourage us and tell us that anyone who tells us that food can help a person with their disease is foolish and that they're quacks, and not to listen to that. We disregarded that advice and continued on the path towards nutritional therapy, because if a GI tube helps by giving the digestive system a rest, you can't tell me food has nothing to do with it. So we continued on SCD. We had ups and downs. We had moments where we felt like it wasn't working in the beginning. And we realized that we would have to start all over and go back to the intro diet. When we did that, we saw, wow, maybe we should take out egg whites and just leave egg yolks. That didn't work. Let's take out egg yolks, add in egg whites. And then that worked. And then we would move on to the next food. And for a long time, Noah was eating the same foods that his body tolerated. And he was frustrated. I think if he could curse, he probably would have cursed us all out. But he was so angry. And then eventually, he started to realize he was feeling better. And no one wants to be their child's enemy. No one wants to see their child upset. But that moment, that temporary time of him being upset was worth it for a long-term solution. So he was angry, but today he is thriving. He is healthy. He had a recent checkup, and we go to a hospital in New York City that supports SCD. And we had an intestinal ultrasound done, and the doctor was amazed at his results and the consistency of his results and the permanence of his remission. And he said there's absolutely no existence of the disease from the test. We have still not been on medication, and Noah is eating a wide variety of foods. He no longer has the issue. We can take him to the park and he doesn't feel like his joints are hurting him, no bruising. We used to go to the bathroom every day to look at his stool, to check and make sure that it wasn't diarrhea. Now he only goes once a day instead of like 5 times a day. And we sometimes forget to look because we forget that Crohn's is still an issue. But thankfully, he lives a healthy, happy life. And I think what other moms here can attest to is that we're teaching our children to set a standard for themselves. And the way that you eat and the way that you treat your body is a reflection of your standard. It's a reflection of how you live your life. And we oftentimes try to use careful words when we talk to him about food. We don't ever want him to feel like he is actually being restricted or like he's missing out. Instead, we try to teach him that the standard American diet is the diet that causes children to miss out and to lose out. And that is really where they're eliminating nutrients, where he's getting the best foods. So I love the idea that all these people come over and hang out and they're all over the SCD foods, and those are the first foods to go, because in actuality, if you look at social media or anything at all, everybody wants to be healthy these days, but very few people have the self-discipline to actually carry it out. So we try to teach Noah that people who are healthy and who are successful with nutritional therapy are not people who are just in a great mood all the time, people who have more advantages, people who have a better situation. It's just people who are self-disciplined. And that quality of self-discipline and self-control permeates every aspect of life, whether it be your job or your friendships or the way you play sports. So I'm grateful for SCD because it's not just a diet, it's really a lifestyle that has provided Noah with a platform and a basis of giving 100% in one direction and seeing the fruitage that comes from it. So I'm confident that others who maybe haven't started but are thinking about it, or have started but are struggling, even if you are on medication or your child is on medication, don't take for granted the fact that what you fuel your body with does make a difference. So whether SCD is being used in conjunction with medication or if you're trying to avoid it, all it takes is the diligence and the determination to get through it. There were nights where we all prayed and we all cried and we all felt like we're losing control. But if you have the desire to not give up and you have the desire to be loyal to yourself and to your child and not stray from what you know is right, you can have a successful SCD story too, like everyone else here. So I'm very grateful for SCD and for Noah and for the platform like this to be here with all of you and be able to see that the word is spreading, and that hopefully soon, like we mentioned earlier, SCD is not the best kept secret, and that more people and more doctors will learn to see that teaching people and educating them about nutrition is not a disservice to them. It's not a handicap to them. And although it's not convenient to have an educated patient, the doctors who really care will hopefully pay attention to the fact that they can be saving lives by means of nutrition. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be able to share Noah's story, and I hope that that helps someone else.
Thank you so much, Celina. One quick question for you. When was your child diagnosed, and what is your child's current age?
My son is now 7. He was diagnosed in 2020, and he just turned 7 in June. In February 2020 is when he was diagnosed. So we thought it couldn't get much worse than a Crohn's diagnosis, but then the pandemic hit and then we were stuck. So, but yeah, he's doing great.
And he's growing and gaining weight according to the charts?
Yes, he's completely, I mean, my family has a lot of short men, so that's the sad part, is that that's kind of just genetic. But the last visit with his doctor, they stated that he's completely on the charts as far as average. He's doing great as far as weight. He's right now at 43 pounds and full of energy, vibrant. And he, if you asked him, is just like every other kid.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much, Celina. Thank you.